Though the trend of people working from home has been on the rise, the pandemic hit the fast forward button. This large scale, unplanned global experiment could result in more permanent change to workplace culture. Dr. Sarah Perry is an assistant professor of management at Baylor University and a leading expert and researcher on remote work. Thanks for joining us with NewsPoint today.
Thanks for having me.
In 2018, you led a team of researchers examining the relationship between remote work and stress. What were your findings regarding productivity, quality of work life, and stress?
So we found in that study, consistent with the remote work literature, that autonomy is a very important consideration when working remotely. That was number one. That most people, most employees need a good deal of discretion and freedom, flexibility when they are sent to work remotely away from the main office. And in terms of the impact that it has, we looked at three forms of strain, which are outcomes of stress: dissatisfaction, disengagement, and exhaustion. And we found that those who have more autonomy and work remotely more often do the best in terms of those outcomes. They don't have as much exhaustion and they're more engaged, more satisfied. We also found, though, a caveat that personality really matters. And specifically, we looked at emotional stability and found that people who are lower in emotional stability don't want or need as much autonomy as everyone else. So it's really up to leaders to understand their individual employees' needs and how much support they really need, especially when they're sending them away to work at home, away from the main office, away from the support they would find in the main office.
And despite all the skepticism about productivity or lack thereof, your findings bore out different information.
We didn't look at productivity in this study, but the findings in general, yes, it is not the case that people go away to work from home and don't work. By and large, people, when they are remote workers, actually might have more productivity. If we can find more opportunities for deep work or focused work, then those types of workers actually work more or work more productively, maybe work more efficiently. We also find that remote workers in general are at more risk for what we call intensification. So more working after hours, kind of never putting it down. So that's one of the risks that I often caution people is make sure you have a clear stopping time so you don't find your brain constantly in work mode, and that will lead to burnout over time.
Well, now the people who were forced into working remotely as a result of the pandemic had little time to prepare and really little choice. Mm-hmm. Would that stressful introduction, you think, produce different results or consistent results?
Yeah, I think, and we've done some research recently on this and have found that there are differences in those people that are new remote workers during this pandemic versus those who already had structures and practices and routines in place. They knew how to work from home, and then the pandemic hit and they could just adjust. So the people that were not working remotely before, we found really have an even greater need for that autonomy, that sense of control. We also found that there are two types of that control that you need at home and at work. So we need, and that's important for both experienced remote workers as well as new remote workers. It really supports the literature on autonomy, saying how important remote work and autonomy is together, that it further says we need to be able to arrange our work environments in a way that can work for our lives, that we can get our work done, that we can still be engaged in our work, and we can still have our time away from work.
And there are certainly many benefits to working from home, but also some inherent challenges, as you've already alluded to. It's very difficult, I think, to shut off. The lines get blurred between work time and home time. Are there other concerns as well?
Yes, the blurring lines is a big concern, and part of that could be space and where you choose to work from home. So one of the recommendations we always give is make sure that you set boundaries for time and space. If you can have a specific schedule and a specific space that is dedicated to work, and you leave that when the time is up. That can really help you not blur the line so much. Another potential risk in this particular environment is there are a lot more interruptions from our home life while we're trying to work. So that's a huge concern. Usually, a benefit of remote work is you have fewer interruptions and you can get more focused work accomplished. But that's not the case in our current environment if we have everyone in our family home with us. So that's something we have to structure and try to arrange if you have a partner to share responsibilities, to talk through the schedule and negotiate when will each of us be doing our work and where will we be doing our work, et cetera. Another challenge that we do worry about is isolation. And although we've seen less isolation in terms of if we have our family with us, we're never alone. So that's a whole different concern. Usually when we're working remotely, we do worry about isolation. And we've still seen it in terms of our study in the numbers reported for professional isolation. So people are feeling isolated, even though they may be surrounded by their families, their kids, their partner, et cetera.
Regular check-ins was a tip that you talked about, being very proactive and reaching out. We begin to think that people are overboard with Zoom and meetings reduce productivity, but in this instance, it's the opposite.
Yeah, and it's really, at this point, you have an opportunity to build the culture or to strengthen the culture you're trying to foster in the organization and in the team. And the way you proactively check in with each other could be a huge part of that. And we all have this shared experience that we can bond over now. So it is actually an opportunity to build cohesion among your coworkers if you do that enough. You don't want to go overboard and constantly be having Zoom meetings that are interrupting your work. But it's an important thing to keep connected for many reasons, for professionally, why we need to keep connected with our coworkers.
Well, no doubt the longer people work from home, the more likely accepted and adopted it will become. Dr. Perry, we thank you so much for sharing your insights and your research findings with us with NewsPoint today.
Absolutely. Thank you.